Welcome back to our video briefing series. I'm Cam from Riviera Nautic, and in this session we're going to look at some of the systems on board your boat at Riviera Nautic. As it is at the moment, we are on a Due 436 yacht, but a lot of the things that we talk about in this session can be applied to any of the boats in our fleet. There'll be just some minor variation, and you can talk to your briefer about that during your briefing. However, basically what we talk about is going to be reasonably standard across the fleet. First, I'm going to talk about power on board your boat. On your first night on board, you've most likely been plugged into shore power, which gives you access to 240 volt power just like you've got at home. However, because we don't have 2 kilometre long extension leads to get you around the lakes, once we unplug you from the jetty, you're relying on your boat's 12 volt battery power. And the way that your boat is set up with its 12 volt battery power is that we have 2 banks of batteries, and the first battery is dedicated just for starting the engine. It does nothing else but start the engine. The second bank of batteries, which we call your house battery or your house bank, is doing everything else. It's doing the load of the work on your boat, and one of the biggest loads on your battery power is your electric fridge. So it's important obviously that we have our fridge running to keep our food cold. However, what that means over the course of a day is that your house battery is diminishing, and if we do nothing about it, it's going to be flat probably within about 24 hours. So the way that we charge our batteries is by running the engine, and even if our house batteries were flat, our engine is still going to start because it's got its own battery. So once the engine's running, it's charging everything again, and we can remain nice and healthy. So it's a neat replenishing cycle, and there's no reason that you need to run out of battery power as long as we are running the engine fairly regularly. So how much is regularly? What you need to keep in mind on all of our boats is that you're running the engine for at least 2 hours every day. So 2 hours a day is what we need to keep things healthy. If you're on a sailing boat, maybe you've done a lot of sailing during a day, you get to your destination and you think, well, we probably only run the engine for for an hour so far during the day. You will need to start the engine again and just let it run for the purpose of charging, to make sure you get that 2 hours each day. The other thing that your running of the engine is doing is providing you with hot water. So it's heating a hot water storage tank. So it's another good reason to run your engine, to make sure you've got hot water when you want it. If you are after hot water and it's coming out as cold, start your engine, and probably half an hour later or so you'll have hot water again. We don't charge you anything extra for fuel. In fact, your fuel is covered in your charter fee, so don't feel nervous about running that engine as much as you need to. Back to the power side of things, the 12 volt power is all controlled from your main switch panel. On the Due 436 it looks like this, and it's going to be something fairly similar on the boat that you have hired. There'll always be a section of the panel dedicated to the 240 volt power. That's the shore power I was talking about when we're plugged into a jetty. So for all intents and purposes, for your whole charter, you can forget about the 240 volt panel. So this is mainly what we're focused on here. Typically the way that electrical systems work on boats is that there's a master switch for things, and then there might be a remote switch somewhere else, and cabin lights is a good example of that. If we look at our cabin lights master switch here, we need to have that switch on before we can go and turn lights on at elsewhere inside the cabin. So if we turn the master switch off, that cancels all the power to the rest of that circuit. So a really good idea when you're looking at your switch panel, make sure you do it a few times a day, particularly before you go to bed. Turn anything off that you're not currently using. I'll go through this panel just in a bit of detail so you can see the sorts of things that will be appearing in your vessel as well. The first 2 switches on this boat relate to navigation lights. We've got navigation lights and we've got a steaming light. Now they're lights that the boat must display if it's out after dark or in poor visibility. So we'd put those 2 on if there was a risk of other boats not seeing us. Now this is a good time to reinforce the times and curfews that you're allowed to be underway at Riviera Nautic. In the morning, as long as the sun is up and it's reasonably good visibility, you're welcome to get underway. In the afternoon, we do ask all boats to be moored in their final destination for the evening by 5 p.m, by 5 o'clock in the afternoon. So you can see already that there's very little possibility that you'll be needing your navigation lights. However, if you are out in the middle in perhaps fog or heavy rain, good idea to put your navigation lights on so that other vessels can see you. Unfortunately, it doesn't help you see anything, but it helps other vessels see you. Your mooring light is or sometimes called an anchor light, is a white light at the top of the mast. It's 360 degrees, and it just indicates to other vessels that there is a boat at anchor. Now, as you've seen in one of the past videos on navigation and the map briefing, typically on the Gippsland Lakes we're tied up to jetties for the night, or we're even nosed up to the beach. In those situations we typically don't bother with our mooring light or our anchor light, but if you are indeed at anchor, or maybe you've picked up a public swing mooring like in Duck Arm, good idea to put your mooring light on so that other vessels can see that you're there at night. On this boat and on most of the yachts we have a deck light. The deck light is just a white light halfway up the mast, shining onto the foredeck for your own use. Cabin lights we spoke about before. This vessel has 2 cabin lights master switches, so it's a master switch for essentially 2 different areas of the boat. Really good idea. You'll obviously need these master switches on when you have cabin lights on, but a good idea during the day to turn those off, just in case someone's left a light on somewhere around the boat during the day and you're not going to see it during the daytime, and you might accidentally waste some battery power. So flick that one off when you're not using your cabin lights. Bit of terminology here. The windlass switch. Windlass refers to an electric anchor winch. So if we're going to use our electric anchor winch on this vessel, we need to have the master switch on first. On some of the boats you'll find as well, in addition to having a switch on, that the engine needs to be running as well for the anchor winch to work. And if you think about it, there's probably not a lot of situations where you'd be wanting to use the anchor winch without the engine already running anyway. So we'll turn that one off for now. Water pressure. Every boat will have a water pressure switch, and that switch needs to be on for water to flow out of the taps. Obviously we don't have mains pressure water, so we're relying on an electric pump to provide the mains, or to provide the pressure in the water system. So for convenience you can typically leave that on during the day. Good idea to turn it off at night. Let the pressure ease out of the system and give it a break. Bilge pumps. So the bilge, again some terminology, the bilge is the area of the boat underneath the floor that we don't normally see, and it's quite normal for a lot of boats to get just small amounts of water into the bilge. There's a lot of penetrations in hulls of boats for shafts and rudders, etc., etc., and we do sometimes just get small amounts of water in there. Every boat at Riviera Nautic is fitted with an electric bilge pump system, which is automatic. So what that means is that any water that does collect in the bilge gets pumped out automatically. So there's typically not much you need to be involved with. On some vessels at this point with the bilge pump switch, it'll have perhaps a 3-way switch, and one of those settings will be auto, and it's really important that the switch stays on auto the whole time if that's the case in your vessel. If for some reason that fails and there's a lot of water collecting in the bottom of the boat, or perhaps it failed 3 days ago, and the water level in the bilge that we can't see is getting to a point that it needs to indicate to us that something's not right. At that point, if I can just direct you over here, you would eventually get an alarm out of this bilge water alarm. Now it's if you hear the alarm go off, it doesn't necessarily mean abandon ship or anything like that, but it does mean that something's not operating as it should be. So if that alarm goes off, on this boat, if we come back to this switch, we would go back to our bilge pump. You see this is a manual switch, so if we turn that on, it's now running the pump underneath the floor. We could force it to run. I should also indicate to you that if that alarm was going off, you'd be letting us know about it at Riviera Nautic back at the base, and we'd help you troubleshoot it from there. So just to recap the bilge pump, the important thing is that if your vessel has an auto setting on this bilge pump switch, that it stays on the auto both day and night the whole time that you're out on charter. The next switch here is the fridge, and most of our vessels, in fact all of the vessels, have an electric fridge. When that switch is on, the fridge is on. So typically that needs to be on the whole time that you're out on charter. I would say though that you can quite happily turn your fridge off at night, and all of our fridges are like an insulated box, and they'll stay cold until the next morning without any trouble. Perhaps set an alarm for 8 o'clock in the morning or whatever suits you, so that you remember to turn your fridge back on during the day, but turning it off at night does give your batteries a bit of a break. The next switch here you'll see is a shower pump. So all of the vessels at Riviera Nautic have hot showers in the bathrooms, and each vessel has a different way of extracting that water. So the water that collects under the floor below your feet, again, unlike home where it drains away, it needs to be pumped out of the boat. So on this particular boat, we have a master switch for the shower pump. And again, this is just a master switch, so it's not forcing that pump to run yet. And when we look in the bathroom, or the head, as we should call it on a boat, in a moment you'll see there's another switch on the side of the vanity, which will pump the water out from underneath the floor, called the shower sump. And as long as this master switch is on, you'll be able to do that from inside the bathroom. So let's say we were wanting to have a shower. We'd need to have the water pressure on up here, and we need to have the master switch on for the shower pump as well. Down here to navigation, now that's a switch that on this particular vessel isn't connected, so we don't have to worry about that one. This switch is an important one. On this vessel it's called PC 12 volt Hi-Fi. Now Hi-Fi is the stereo system, so it's giving you power to the stereo system, which is just like a car radio. But also on this boat, it is powering up the 12 volt sockets. So I've mentioned already that we don't have 240 volt power once you leave the jetty. So this style plug, 240 volt outlet that you're used to seeing at home, as soon as you leave the jetty, that is no longer available to you. What is available is the 12 volt outlet. So all of our boats have at least a what we'd call a 12 volt socket, or the old cigarette lighter socket that you would see in most cars. So that's your power source once you are out on the water. So if you've got car chargers or adapters for charging phones that you've got in your car, bring those with you. It's really important that you're able to charge your phones and devices, and you can do that on all of the Riviera Nautic boats. So every switch panel will have a switch which brings alive your power outlet. The radio switch on this boat, now that powers up our marine radio. So our marine radio, which is over here. Okay, so the marine radios that we use, and I'll preface this discussion by saying that the marine radios we use are a 27 meg band radio. Now unfortunately it's a band of radio which isn't terribly well supported with repeaters anymore around the lakes and elsewhere. However, it's the only band of radio that we can have our guests use without a license. So we do persevere with it, but do keep in mind that it's not necessarily going to be a reliable form of communication for you. However, we do have almost perfect phone coverage all around the lakes. So it is there for your use, and you'll see at the moment it's on channel 68. Channel 68 is the channel that we are monitoring in the office. At 2 o'clock every day we will do a radio sked on channel 68, and we will start by broadcasting the weather forecast. And as mentioned in another video, the weather forecast that we use is the BOM Gippsland Lakes forecast. If you Google or put into your search engine BOM Gippsland Lakes, you'll get that forecast. But we'll broadcast that at 2 o'clock in the afternoon every day. And once we've read the forecast, we'll call by name each boat that's out on the water, and we will ask you to respond if you hear that, and let us know what your plans are as far as an overnight destination goes for that day. Now, if you're not in the boat at 2 o'clock, that's fine, or if you don't hear it, perhaps you're out of range, that's fine, but we do ask you to make sure you've made contact with us by 5 p.m, no later than 5 p.m. It's important that we've had contact with each vessel every day. So if you do want to contact us at the Riviera Nautic base, and I'm doing this without prompting the office, we're going to do a quick radio check to the office. Channel 68, we've got a volume control at the top, and we've got a squelch control. It's important I just explain the squelch. The squelch is essentially, it can be thought of like a filter. If we put the squelch all the way up on full, it'll make the radio nice and quiet, but we've probably just filtered out any signal that we might want to receive on channel 68. If we put the squelch all the way down low, it opens up that filter to receive all of the signals, but it does get background static, and we don't want to put up with that all day. So what we do is we start with the squelch down low, we raise it until the background noise stops, and that's about our optimum setting. So we don't want to be going too high and risk cutting out the signals that are coming in. If we're calling Riviera Nautic, that's what we're known as at our base. You are known as your boat name, and I've chosen the most difficult boat name to say, so this is Ciel de Tay, and we're just going to repeat those station names a few times to make sure that it comes through clearly, and with a bit of luck we'll raise David in the office. Riviera Nautic, Riviera Nautic, Riviera Nautic, this is Ciel de Tay, Ciel de Tay, Ciel de Tay for a radio check, over. And I've said over when I've finished my sentence, just so that the other station knows. Yeah, thanks Dave, Ciel de Tay out. Okay, so I've said the word over when I finish my sentence, just to indicate to the other station that I finished talking and it's their turn to talk. Having said that, we don't have to be too formal on the radio. Channel 68 that we're using is really only reserved for our fleet on the lakes. You won't hear much other traffic on there. So that's the marine radio, and that covers most of the panel here. There's a bit more information that we've got, and you'll have this on nearly all of the Riviera Nautic fleet as well. Now this is a voltage indicator, and it's indicating the voltage of the two sets of batteries that I explained earlier. So you'll see here, and we are plugged into a battery charger at the jetty at the moment, so we're looking really healthy. But just keep in mind that once your battery is at 12 volts, or certainly below 12 volts, you're essentially flat at that point. So we want to stop it getting to that point. So rather than being too stressed about what your voltage indicator is showing you, I just want you to think more about getting that 2 hours of engine running each day, and that'll keep you nice and healthy. This boat has a fuel tank gauge as well. I've just turned it off, but it was on full. On any of our boats on the lakes, no matter the length of your holiday, you don't have to worry about running out of fuel. Okay, so that's the electrical system that we're going to leave there for the moment, and we're going to turn our attention to the bathroom, or the head, as we call it in a boat. And inside each of the bathrooms on all of our boats, you've got a hot shower. Quite often the shower nozzle is actually lifting the basin tap out of the basin and using that. But every boat has hot water and the ability to shower. Of course, you've only got a finite amount of water supply, so you do need to be careful about the length of time, or how many showers that you're having on board the boat. We do also obviously have toilets on board each of the boats. Most of our yachts have a single toilet. Our motor cruisers will have either one or two toilets in separate bathrooms. The toilets on board all of the boats go into holding tanks, so we don't pump any waste into the lake itself. It gets stored in holding tanks, and it needs to be pumped out when it gets full. So the next question you're going to ask is, how do we know when it's full? Really, the only way you know that your tank is full is that it starts to get hard to flush it away from the bowl, or without being too crude, you may see out of a breather above deck some sort of discharge coming out of a breather hole as well. But so you want to stop it getting to that point, and the way to do that is to try and build in a pit stop, if you like, or a pump out with us at about day 3 or 4 is normally what we'd expect most groups to get out of a holding tank. So your toilet on board your boat will either be one of two types. It'll be manual or it'll be electric. If it's electric, it'll have either just one flushing button or perhaps 2 or 3 buttons that have diagrams on them and indicate what they're doing. So if it's got more than one button, typically it'll have a button for bringing water into the bowl. It'll have a button for flushing, so sucking the water out and replenishing with flushing water. And then it may also have a button for emptying water out of the bowl at the end. So it's not quite as simple as a toilet you've got at home. If your boat has a manual toilet, which is what this vessel has here, it will have, if I can get out of the way a little, it'll have a pump handle, and it will have a valve. And the valve just has 2 settings. On the right hand side it's a dry bowl, on the left hand side it's a wet bowl or a flushing, if you can see that. See the diagram there. When you come into the bathroom, it should have been left on the right hand side, so that's where it should be when you walk in. And first thing we can do is flick it across to the left to the flush setting, and if we give a few pumps on the handle, that'll bring some water into the bowl. And then we can use the toilet, and still on that left hand flush setting, once we've finished using the toilet, we pump, and that's flushing the toilet. And once your waste is clear of the bowl, we go back to the right hand side, and just a few final pumps will empty the clear flushing water that's been left in the bowl. So the important thing is that when you leave the bathroom, that valve has been left on the right hand side, which is the dry bowl. Okay. And this is the point where I need to apologise for being blunt, but it's really important that we get the message across that a marine toilet, a boat toilet, is not like a toilet that you've got at home. So the toilet you've got at home has pipework this big, and rightly or wrongly, whatever you flush down the toilet will disappear. Marine toilets tend to have pipework about that big, and we're expecting a lot of it. So we need to make sure that, please, that nothing foreign goes into the toilets. The toilet won't cope with tissues or wipes or sanitary products or anything like that. It will block if you put any of those down the toilet. Equally, if you feel like you're using a lot of paper, try and flush it away as you're using the toilet to make sure you're getting all your paper, etc., clear of the bowl. Okay, so we'll leave the bathroom there, and we're going to move on to gas. Is the next thing that we're going to discuss on board the boat. So all of our vessels have gas on board. They have a gas bottle, which is essentially just like a barbecue bottle that you've probably got some experience with, and they will be delivering gas to an appliance such as this one, a stove and an oven inside the boat. Some boats will also have a barbecue out on deck, which might be fed from the main gas bottle as well, or in some instances it will have its own gas bottle local at the barbecue. So just come on down this way a little. I'm going to show you some safety devices that we have on board for gas, but do keep in mind that all we're really dealing with is a barbecue bottle. So if you're ever concerned about gas on board your boat, you'll know where the bottle is. That'll be located at the start of your briefing, and you can turn the bottle off at the tap at the bottle, and that gives you confidence that you haven't got any gas flowing when you don't want it to be. So if we take the example on this boat, the Dew 436, it has a 2-burner stove, and it has an oven. It's fed from a gas bottle, which is out in a gas safe locker outside. And I say a gas safe locker, what that means is that even if the bottle was to leak or to hemorrhage, any gas that spills is going to spill outside of the boat. Okay, so the danger that can come about having gas on board a boat is that if we have a leak inside the hull, gas is heavier than air, so it sinks to the lowest point, and at that point it gets difficult to disperse it again. So our bottles are stored in a location where gas is going to spill outside of the boat. So that's safety part number one. Your boat will have a gas detection system, which will either be the same or similar to this one here. The gas detection system has sensors that are in the boat and typically down low that are sniffing for gas the whole time. So if your gas detector has a power button like this one, it stays on the whole time, day and night, so for your whole charter. And you'll see that this one has a traffic light system, and at the moment it's happy, it's green, its sensors that are down low in the boat are not detecting any gas. Now these sensors are quite sensitive, and they will at times pick up things that aren't gas. So if it does alarm at you, it'll buzz and it'll go to a danger light. This type of unit has a reset button here, and we can push the reset button down and it'll reset itself. If it goes back to safe, that's great. If it is stubbornly alarming at you still, we should assume at that point we may have a gas issue. So we would turn the bottle off at the tap, out at the gas bottle, and you'd be calling us and letting us know about that as well, and we can help you troubleshoot that from there. The second function of this system, so the first function is the gas detection. The second function is this LP gas on demand switch, and if I turn that one on, you'll see we get a little red light. What that button is doing is it's literally opening and closing a valve out at the gas bottle. So that's essentially doing the job of turning the gas bottle on and off. The idea of this button is, and the reason it has a light, is that we turn it on just when we want to use gas. When we've finished using gas, so the kettle's boiled or we finish cooking dinner, we turn that off, and that has sealed the bottle. Beg your pardon. So the power button stays on the whole time. The demand switch, or the gas switch, it's called on a couple of detectors. We use that on and off as we want to use the gas. So if we demonstrate that now, if we turn that on, we're allowing the gas to flow out of the bottle. In this instance, we'll light the stove with a match. If we light our match, there we go. So turning the stove knob, I'm holding it in for about 10 seconds to make sure it stays alight with its thermocouple. And the stove's alight. If I just demonstrate, even without turning it off here, if we turn our gas switch off, which seals the bottle, you'll see within a few seconds it'll run out of gas, and there we go, and turn itself off. So that's just to demonstrate how that switch works. So it is important, again, it has a light to remind you that we turn that off when we're not using the gas. Okay, so we'll leave it there for this session, and look forward to talking to you again soon.